Hi, precious saints. It's been a long time, more than a week since I released my last podcast. You must have wondered what had happened to me. It's actually been an extremely difficult time for me for many reasons, both in the natural and spiritually. I had been praying that the Lord would search my heart if there was any wicked way in me. After I had spoken about the silver and the dross, and God has taken me at my word and has been faithful in showing me things that were hiding in my heart that I didn't know were there or didn't recognize fully. And so I've been dealing with that, but I've had some difficult personal circumstances as well. And at the same time as all this, the Lord has been downloading quite a lot of understanding, but because of what's been happening in my life, I haven't had a lot of time to record it, fully digest it, never mind to make a podcast and share it with all of you. So I hope that explains my absence. After I did my podcast, The Furnace of Waiting, the Lord reminded me of what happened in Genesis 1. God said, "Let there be light." And then there was evening and morning the first day. And the Lord reminded me how, even though God had spoken that light was to come into existence, the first thing that followed that decree was evening or darkness. And so he reminded me that when he releases a word or when he speaks, that word does not fall to the ground after a few minutes. That frequency and sound release from the mouth of God continues to perform and execute what it has been told to do, even though straight after it has been released, it looks like exactly the opposite is happening. God said, "Let there be light," and then there was evening. So God speaks light and darkness manifests, which is rather strange, isn't it? But then there was morning after the evening. So after 3 watches of the night, then there was the dawn watch, and the morning came. So the Lord used that to show me that when he speaks something, there's quite a long period before what he has said begins to manifest in the natural realm. And so he told me to go back to words that he had spoken years before this and see what he had said, because those words he had spoken were still working and creating and producing, even though there wasn't much manifestation or evidence of the fruit of those words up to this point. So in the year 2019, September 2019, and in February 2020, I spoke at 2 conferences. The first one was the release of the fire starters, and the second one was the sound of the warrior bride. And at that time, the Lord showed me that those 2 conferences were like 2 bookends, and all the books in between, or all the words spoken between those 2 bookends, was a DNA code or a heavenly frequency that was being released. And as DNA creates, and there's instruction to create and to bring forth in a DNA strand, so too the words that God had spoken at that time had been released in order to create. And although we're now sitting in 2023, and there's not much evidence of what was spoken in the natural in those days, it does not mean that those were not words from the Lord, and it does not mean those words have fallen to the ground and died, because God's breath is eternal. The breath of God's mouth carries resurrection life, and it never falls to the ground and dies. It carries on creating what it was intended to do. He watches over his word to perform it. Remember, that's what he said to Jeremiah in Jeremiah chapter 1. Do you remember God said to Jeremiah, "What do you see?" And Jeremiah said, "An almond branch." And God said, "You have seen well. I am watching over my word to perform it." And God seems to like plays on words, because the word for almond is shaked, and it comes from the root word shakad, which means to watch. So God was saying, yes, what you're seeing is what I'm doing. And that almond branch that he showed to Jeremiah is connected to the almond rod of Aaron. And as you will remember, if you've listened to my past few podcasts, we were dealing with God cleansing and purifying his bridal company, and the rod of Aaron amongst the 12 rods of the chiefs of the tribes of Israel in the wilderness lay before the Lord all night long. And in the morning it was in evidence that the rod of Aaron had budded, blossomed, and borne fruit. In other words, that dry rod had been imbued with resurrection life. God says he watches over his word to perform it, and in that night of laying before the ark of the Lord, he was watching over his word to perform it. What was the word he was watching over? Well, we spoke about it before in the last messages on the purification of the bride. God said to Moses that he was going to sort out this rebellion of Korah and Dathan and Abiram. And Moses told the people, in the morning the Lord will show who are holy and who he will cause to come near him. And then in Numbers 17, God says, in clarification, the rod of the man I choose shall bud. And as I mentioned in a previous podcast, although Moses spoke this explanation of what God was going to do on the evening of the 1st of Sivan, it was only on the morning of the 3rd day that the budded rod of Aaron was brought out and revealed. So when Moses said, in the morning the Lord will show who are holy and who he will cause to come near him, it was speaking about something God was going to do and set in motion, but only on the morning of the 3rd day would he be effectively declaring that Aaron is the one he was choosing to come near to him. So there we see again this principle of God saying something, let there be light, and then there's evening, and then there's morning after 3 night watches. In the morning watch of the 3rd day, the rod of Aaron with resurrection power is revealed. So what the Lord pointed out to me is that when I did those 2 conferences in September 2019 and February 2020, it was the year 5780 in the Hebrew calendar. And the Lord told me at that time that 5780 was the evening watch year. And he began to give me a pattern in order to have understanding of the times. As I said before, there are 4 watches of a night, from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., from 9 p.m. to 12 p.m., 12 to 3, and then 3 to 6 is the morning watch. Now, the evening watch is the watch of the day that precedes the first watch of the night. It's from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. The Lord said to me, 5780 was the evening watch year. Now, I want to go right back to the crucifixion and show you something that is very interesting. Jesus died at 3 p.m., the beginning of the evening watch. And what was the sound he released at the beginning of that evening watch? He said, "It is finished." Then he was taken down off the cross, put in the tomb, and only on the third day was he seen openly manifest in resurrection power. So he spoke something declaring that something had been completed, but the fullness of completion was only evidenced on the third day. Remember, Moses said, "In the morning the Lord will show who are holy and who he will cause to come near to him." And it was only on the third day that the rod of Aaron with resurrection life was openly revealed and manifest. So we want to look at the watches of the night and see the years that they correspond to, as God gave me that pattern of a year being like a watch. If 5780 was the evening watch, 5781 is the first watch of the night, 5782 is the second watch of the night, and 5783, the year we are currently in the Hebrew calendar, is the third watch of the night. The year 5784 would be the morning watch year. I know some of you get totally addled when I start speaking of the Hebrew year numbers because you are used to the Roman calendar. But it is important because of the pattern and the template of the watches of the night that we look at the Hebrew years. The year 5780 corresponds to the year 2020, but 5780 began on the 1st of October 2019. Now the evening watch is the watch where one is aware that the night is about to fall, that darkness is about to manifest itself in the earth. And we know that in late 2019, the virus that has been racing all over the earth and been spoken about and introducing an injection in the arm to supposedly prevent was first seen in Wuhan, China in late 2019. So basically at the beginning of the evening watch year, that circumstance manifested in China. And then in 5780 in March 2020 was when the lockdowns happened and the almost compulsory pharmaceutical intervention was introduced to the world. I had the Sound of the Warrior Bride conference in February 2020, just before the lockdowns were instituted. I thank the Lord that we were able to get that in. So it was in that conference that the Lord spoke a number of things. And in this week, He's had me go back to the things that He said during those two bookend conferences. What did the DNA consist of that He was releasing before the three watches of the night that would follow? That would be the year 2021, 2022, and 2023, which is the third watch of the night. He said to me that it's good to rehearse the sound released because it never falls to the ground and died, but is continuously producing, even in the darkness, though we do not see what was happening. Remember that Aaron's rod and all the other 11 rods were lying before the Lord, the Ark of the Covenant, all night. No one could see what was happening in the darkness. In fact, 98% of the tribe of Israel were probably asleep during that night. But God said, "The rod of the man I choose will bud." Now, an interesting thing is when you have conception and a woman becomes pregnant, the DNA that is produced from the sperm and the egg forms a zygote which embeds itself in the wall of the womb. And we have 3 trimesters in pregnancy. And during those 3 trimesters, different things happen. But the first thing that happens is that the little first bits of flesh begin to be made to create the baby in the womb. The heart begins to beat and little buds are formed where the arms and the legs are going to be. They don't look like arms and legs at the time, but they blossom into arms and legs. In the second trimester, the third trimester, the baby is almost fully formed. In the 7th month, the hearing becomes fully formed and the lungs start to develop well, and the baby grows and matures in the 3rd trimester. And then it is born and becomes fully manifest. Now, Aaron's rod budded, blossomed, and bore fruit. 3 different stages are mentioned. 1st trimester, 2nd trimester, 3rd trimester. And then ripe almonds were seen when it was brought out of the Holy of Holies. So there were 3 stages, 3 watches during the darkness that were happening. You can't see what's happening when a baby's forming in the mother's womb. It's in the darkness. It's almost in the Holy of Holies. But there's a budding, there's a blossoming, and there's a bearing fruit of the frequency and the DNA that has been spoken and released to form that baby. In the same way, in your life, God has spoken things over you during that evening watch year, 5780 or 2020. And you probably haven't seen much manifestation of those things in the earthly realm in the intervening years. But the Lord wants you to go back and rehearse and re-listen and rehear the words and the frequency that He released over you in that time, because you have been through dark watches of the night in the intervening years. We are now in the 3rd part of the 3rd watch of the night. We're currently sitting for the Tip of the Spear Company. There's a new moon that's hopefully going to be sighted tonight for the month of Tammuz. The rabbinic calendar is about to start Sivan, which is a month earlier than Tammuz. If a year is as a watch in the night, 5780 was the evening watch year. 5783 is the 3rd watch of the night year. So 12 months of the Hebrew year is equal to a watch. A watch, the evening watch, is from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. There's 3 hours there. So 12 months is equivalent of 3-hour watch. Therefore, 4 months of the Hebrew year is equal to 1 hour of the watch. We are in the 3rd part of the 3rd watch of the night. The 3rd part of the 3rd watch of the night is the months Sivan, Tammuz, Av, Elul. And at the end of Elul, you get the beginning of 5784. So those 4 months is the 3rd part of the 3rd watch of the night. I hope I'm saying this in a way that's clear. It might be helpful for you to write it down if you're not familiar with the Hebrew months. So normally in the natural, in the night, the third watch of the night is very dark. And there is a saying, it's darkest just before dawn. Dawn is in the fourth watch of the night, from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. Now dawn approaches. It is not a sudden event. There is an increase of light caused by the rising of the sun beyond the horizon. So when dawn happens, as you know, from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m., it becomes increasingly light. And then when the sun appears above the horizon, which is called sunrise, then the day begins. But it's always darkest just before dawn. So this period we're entering into now, in the spiritual realm and in the earth, is going to be very dark. Very, very dark, dense darkness. We're going to enter into a very difficult time in the earth. Now, the interesting thing about the dawn watch, which also has 3 hours, is there are officially 3 parts of the dawn watch. They are called astronomical twilight, nautical twilight, and civil twilight. And I've talked about this before in Wisdom for the Remnant in the Morning Watch, I think the post was called. During astronomical twilight, only those who are really well versed in studying the heavens and the stars can discern that there's been an increase of light in the heavens. Normal people who don't know much about astronomy cannot discern that it's any less dark than it has been a few hours before. Then nautical twilight is the time when, if you think of a natural morning watch, it's when there's light so you can discern outlines, but everything still looks dark. So if a man stood in front of you, you would see a dark outline against a slightly light horizon, but you wouldn't be able to see any of his features. That's nautical twilight. And then in civil twilight, there's no sunlight, but there's enough light to clearly see all features of everything that is in front of you. So we are entering the third part of the third watch of the night. And after that comes astronomical twilight, which is also, for the normal layman, extremely dark in the earth. So we're talking about 8 months of extreme darkness, which basically takes us from now, the middle of May, well, we're the 20th of May, right till the end of the year and into January. It's going to be very dark in the earth. What is that deep darkness going to consist of? Well, it's basically the wing of the abominations that is going to bring forth the manifestation of the Antichrist. Some of the things it's going to consist of is going to be the central bank digital currency, the crash of the dollar, the removal of cash as a means of purchase, a universal digital ID and credit scores, nuclear war, and a very great increase in persecution of believers, contamination of the food supply so that there's going to be famine. I'm not saying that all those things are going to come at once in the next 8 months, but these are all parts of the darkness that is going to be settling heavily upon the earth. When it says in Isaiah 60, darkness is upon the earth and dense darkness is upon the peoples, those 2 words for darkness are 2 different Hebrew words. The word darkness upon the earth is chesek. It means misery and affliction, destruction, death, sorrow. That's what the word cheshek means. Great suffering. So there's going to be great suffering and death, destruction and wickedness covering the earth. The gross darkness that is on the people is a different word. It means to drip. And it's the same dense darkness that is spoken of when God hides himself in darkness. So it's almost as if there is a different darkness over the people than there is over the earth. There's a distinction made there. I think it may be referring to a spiritual darkness being over the people. And then it says, but the Lord will arise on you, and his glory will be seen upon you. So it's always darkest just before dawn. This darkness of misery, destruction, death, and wickedness is the kind of darkness that there is before the dawn. 5784 is the morning watch year, but the first part of it is also going to contain this extreme darkness. King Charles was crowned early in May this year, and he is a significant time marker for this terrible darkness settling upon the earth. We've had dark watches of the night ever since 2020, when it was the evening watch year. But the whole thing has been snowballing, bit by bit, month by month, year by year. We've gone through the watches of the night until we've arrived in the third part of the third watch of the night, where we now stand. And what the Lord is saying is, brace yourselves, because the greatest part of the darkness is ahead. And it's going to be consisting of many things that you are seeing coming down the pipe, but they're going to start manifesting in these next 8 months. But for us who belong to the Lord, we have been before the Ark of the Covenant. We have been seeking his face. He has spoken things over our lives, and we've been going through watches of darkness. But there are things in us that have been budding, blossoming, and bearing fruit. Even though our natural eyes can't see it, it is a spiritual reality. So God wants you to remind yourselves of what he has said and spoken over you and promised you. Our eyes get fixed too much on what the enemy is doing in the earth. But what is God doing in the earth? In your life, he said, let there be light. In the year 5780, he said, it is finished, it is complete, it is done. It's a done deal. But you haven't seen it manifest yet. I will give you an example. After the first conference in September 2019, the Lord told me of 2 people in my family that would be passing away in close succession to one another. And he was preparing my heart for that. And I rushed home thinking it was going to happen within a week or 2. Well, to date, in May 2023, those 2 people are still very much alive. What he spoke hasn't happened, and along the way, I began to question whether I'd even heard right concerning that. However, after him speaking to me in the last 10 days, I know I heard right, but I've been going through watches of the night since he spoke that Rhema word into my life, and I will see it manifest, most likely in 5784, the morning watch year. I'm starting to understand that I will see it with my own eyes in the natural in that time. Now, the rod of Aaron going before the ark of the Lord and being brought out in the morning watch with ripe almond fruit on is also a depiction of the manifestation of the sons of God. The sons of God have been through 3 watches of the night, and they're heading into the most difficult part of the night, the witching hour. In other words, there's a great increase of occult activity and demonic activity. However, God has been budding and blossoming and bringing forth fruit in the sons of God, even though it has not been made manifest openly in the earth. It's like in Malachi 3, when those who fear the Lord speak often to one another, and a book of remembrance is written of those who fear the Lord and thought on his name. And they shall be mine in the day that I openly declare them, says the Lord. And you will look back and clearly discern between those who are wicked and those who serve God. And then Malachi 4 begins, the day comes that burns like an oven and leaves the wicked without root or branch. I want to say to you that God's not talking about the wicked who are heathens. God's talking about the wicked amongst his people, because Malachi 3 speaks of God coming as a refiner's fire to his people, that they may offer offerings in righteousness. And then he speaks about this little nugget remnant company that are his jewels. But he's not openly declaring them at that time. But there is a time when he will openly declare them. And that is what we refer to as the manifestation or the adoption of the sons, which is the open recognition and placing of the sons of the right hand. But there has to be 3 watches of the night gone through, in which the sons themselves cannot really see what's going on. They seem to be going through such hardship. And I know many of you who listen to my podcast, you write to me, you tell me you are in extremely difficult circumstances. In many cases, really struggling physically with afflictions and illnesses and infirmities of the body, difficult external circumstances, and it's just seemed to drag on and on. And although you've trusted God, there's been no release, the healing hasn't come, the deliverance from the circumstances hasn't come. But God has been proving you, forming you, shaping you, polishing you as his arrow. What does Malachi 4 say? For you who fear my name, the Son of Righteousness will arise with healing in his wings. That's speaking about a dawn watch. That's speaking about the rising of light. Your dawn watch is coming. But the darkness of the night has been about the forging and the building and the shaping of the sons of God in the 3 dark watches of the night. There has been a budding and a blossoming and a bearing fruit. The bearing fruit is connected to the 3rd watch of the night, which is this year 5783. You might not even see the fruit in your life. You feel much diminished, but God sees the spiritual fruit in your life. And he will bring you forth and reveal you as his jewels, as the Son of Righteousness arises in the morning watch year. God said, I am watching over my word to perform it. When Jeremiah saw the almond branch. God is watching over the word he spoke to you in the evening watch year. He's watching over it to perform it, to bring it to full completion and manifestation in your life. But there has to be the 3 dark watches of the night, which is equivalent to the years we have endured and suffered and gone through since 2020. Even in the earth, there have been 3 watches of a dark night. We've got the darkest part coming up now, with the darkest just before dawn stage. But what God spoke shall not fall to the ground. He's watching over his word to perform it in your life. And the Son of Righteousness is going to arise for those who fear his name, with healing in his wings. That infirmity you've struggled with, that injury, that illness, he's coming to heal and deliver and set you free. You know, when God took his people out of Egypt, there was not one feeble amongst them when they left. But I can guarantee you, before they left, there were many that had physical afflictions because of being in slavery, because of beatings, because of malnutrition, because of injuries on the job, building the pyramids, and goodness knows what they were up to. There were many that were frail and infirm. But when God led them out of Egypt, there was healing that took place, because there was not one feeble amongst all those people. The Son of Righteousness will arise with healing in his wings. The morning watch year. Go back and rehearse and go over the promises God gave you, and begin to thank him for the full manifestation, for bringing forth the full ripe fruit of those words he has spoken. A baby in the womb is even spoken of as fruit of the womb, and it is a reward, but you don't see the baby until the end of the birthing. The ripe fruit of the womb is not seen until the fullness of gestation has been completed, the birth pangs have been gone through, and the baby is brought into the light of full manifestation. God watches over his word to perform it. His words do not fall to the ground, but they accomplish the purpose for which he sent them. Now, there's a lot more that the Lord has shared with me about these things, but I want to leave that as just a structural foundation word and message for you to understand where God is placing me in sharing the things that he's shared with me, and so that you can begin to encourage yourself again in the frequency of the word that he has spoken over you. I want to just quickly and lastly share with you an amazing thing. Tonight, the first sliver of moon is probably going to be sighted for the beginning of the next Hebrew month, as I mentioned. And at the moment, the sun is positioned in the constellation of Taurus. Now, Taurus is depicted as a bull, and there is a constellation called Pleiades, a group of 7 stars that is positioned in the shoulder of Taurus. And at this particular time in the heavens, the sun is in conjunction with Pleiades. So this morning, the 20th of May 2023, when the sun rose, the Pleiades was close enough to the sun that it rose with the sun and was clothed and enveloped with the light of the rising sun. In fact, if you look at the sunrise, when the sun is in conjunction with Pleiades, you can't even see the 7 stars, because the light of the sun envelops and wraps them up in the glory of the sun. Now, the Son of Righteousness is rising with healing in his wings, and he's going to enclose and envelop his overcomer company with light and glory. We see it in what's happening in the heavens right now as this next Hebrew month begins. Now, interestingly, Taurus is connected to the tribe of Joseph. Joseph was the firstborn of Rachel, the beloved wife of Jacob. Joseph's tribe is Ephraim and Manasseh, the 2 half tribes. Do you know that Joseph was born on the 1st of Tammuz, which for the Tip of the Spear Company begins at 6 p.m. tonight when the new moon is sighted. So this is how I know that the tip of the spear is moving in sync with heaven at this time, because the rabbinic calendar is starting Sivan. The month of Sivan is not connected to Joseph. The month of Tammuz is connected to Joseph. and the sun is in Taurus, the symbol that is connected to Joseph, the bull, the ox. Jesus said, I am the Aleph and the Tav. The Aleph, the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, the pictograph of that is an ox, the chief, the head. So Taurus is a picture of Jesus as the Aleph. And the sun of righteousness is rising in Taurus and clothing the Pleiades, the 7 stars, with glory as the sun arises upon them and with them in Taurus. That's an amazing sign in the heavens. God's promising us that even as it says in Isaiah 60, arise and shine, for your light has come and the glory of the Lord is risen upon you. That is being depicted in the heavens at the moment as the sun is in Taurus in conjunction with the 7 stars of Pleiades. Now, when it says arise and shine, it's inferring that whoever's being spoken to was sitting or lying down in darkness before. In other words, God is saying, you've been through the dark night of the soul, you've been through the 3 watches of the night, but I'm telling you, I'm going to arise and shine upon you and clothe you with glory. Yes, there's going to be darkness that covers the earth and dense darkness upon the people, but the Lord will arise upon you and his glory will be seen on you. Hold on to faith, faithful remnant. Hold on to faith. God is not a man that he should lie. What he's promised to you, he will do. Those who fear the Lord are written in the book of remembrance, and they will skip about for joy, because the Son of Righteousness is arising with healing in his wings and bringing release and deliverance and healing. The Lord has instructed me to share with you a dream that I had on Thursday the 18th of May, just a couple of days ago. In the whole long dream, I was on a complicated journey, but when I got to the end of it, I went back to look at a pot that I had left boiling on the stove. And when I looked into the pot to see the contents, there was a big full circle rainbow on the surface of the contents of the pot. It wasn't that half circle that we see on the horizon, it was a full circle of rainbow. And I put my bag down to get my camera, and when I tried to take a photo of it, it had then changed from this one big full circle rainbow to dozens and dozens of small full circle rainbows that were rising to the surface of the liquid and popping open and showing their rainbow. It looked almost like fireworks going off in the sky. You know, when they release a lot of fireworks at once, you see these explosions in the sky right next to each other. And there was also a pink 50 on the surface of the liquid in the pot. I thought originally maybe it was reflecting from the writing on the inside wall of the pot, because I do have a pot that has measurements on the side of it to tell liquid measures, but it wasn't. There was just this pink 50. And when I woke up from the dream, I knew that it signified that I had been on a long journey, and something that had been left cooking on the back burner was now displaying the fullness of God's faithfulness as the rainbow was given to Noah as a sign of God's faithfulness and covenant. And I knew that the fireworks of little full circle rainbows was depicting celebration. I also know that 50 is the number of Jubilee. So I said, what does this all mean, Lord? And this is what he said to me. What I decreed at the beginning of the evening watch will be experienced in the morning watch. And I said, Lord, do you mean what you said in 5780, the two bookends, is that what you're referring to? And he said, yes, daughter. Did I not say, let there be light, and then there was evening and morning the first day? Even so, that decreed before the darkness set in will come to full manifestation in the dawn light. Those who fear my name will skip about for joy, even as the wicked are ashes under their feet. The Jubilee, the setting free from slavery, is synchronized with the day of my righteous judgments. And then he referred me to the scripture in Malachi 4. And I also want to just say to you, look up Isaiah 5, verse 24, because that connects with Malachi 4 and the day that burns like an oven. Isaiah 5:24 says that fire will devour root and blossom, and it's speaking about the Lord's people who are wicked. So that's just a confirmation that Malachi 4 is referring to what's happening in the body of Christ in the day that burns like an oven. I just wanted to share that with you, that God confirmed what I've shared in this podcast in a dream. There will be great celebration. The full circle rainbow of his faithfulness will be in evidence after the long night journey, as what he has spoken has been bubbling on the back burner until the fullness of the morning watch. May the Lord encourage you. The Lord bless you and encourage you with what I've shared. And I'm going to continue in the next podcast because I haven't said half of what the Lord has been sharing with me. I hope it wasn't too muddled and confusing for you. Listen and re-listen and write down the things that I've shared and get an understanding of where you are in your own personal walk through the dark night, through the last 3 years. And know that even though we headed into at least 8 months of real darkness in the earthly realm, in the world system, the glory of the Lord is going to arise upon you. And your light is coming. Because God said over you, let there be light. And although there's been evening, there will be morning. The Lord bless you. Amen.